Hi everybody, welcome to Simply Scuba and welcome to Ask Mark, where I delve deep and answer all of your questions, or as many as I can in this short session. If you've got any questions, queries, comments, corrections about anything to do with scuba diving, let me know down in the comments below, and if you use the hashtag AskMark, it just makes it a lot easier for me to find them. This week we're talking about body temperature in dive computers, interesting topic, hood recommendations, heated undersuits, bungee compasses, mesh collection bags, and equalizing with a full face mask. So let's dive straight in with the first question, which this week comes from Csaba Mecseki, and they say, "Hello Mark, I cannot say enough how much I love your channel. Thank you so very much. What do you think, is there any dive computer in the market which not just measures temperature but also counts this data for the deco algorithm? In real life situations, if you dive a hot spring and the bottom way warmer than the surface, in warmer water nitrogen dissolving is faster." Yeah, so this does exist in a couple or a handful of dive computers. It's all to do with monitoring your skin temperature, because your body temperature, as that fluctuates, yes, you're on-gassing and off-gassing at different rates. If you're very warm, then you tend to on-gas pretty quickly and off-gas pretty quickly. It's the same with all chemical reactions. The warmer it is, the faster it happens. But if you're slow, if you're cold, then the reactions are a bit slower. There are some dive computers, Scuba Pro makes some. If you see human factor diving as a little emblem, it will have that built into it, or it will have that capability built into it. I think the M2 and maybe the Mantis before it, you had the option to get a heart rate monitor belt that also monitors your skin temperature. So you'd put it on just around your rib cage, and it would have sensors that would monitor your heart rate, and it would monitor your skin temperature. It would then send that information to your dive computer, and then the dive computer would tailor your algorithm to be a bit more conservative. If your heart rate was high and you're working really hard and your skin temperature was cold, it would make your decompression profile more conservative. Or if it was just a nice relaxing dive and everything was nice and warm, it would make it a bit more lenient, so you could stay a bit more time under the water. So it does exist. It's not everywhere. The only one that pops to mind is that Scuba Pro, I think it was the M2. I can't remember if the G2 did it as well, because I think the Galileo, the Luna or the Sol, I think they did it beforehand, and then the M2 is like a newer watch-sized version. But yeah, it does exist. It's not very common. I'm not entirely sure why. It could just be the logistics of creating that heart rate monitor belt and getting them to talk and all that kind of stuff, because that's something else that has to be waterproof down with you if you're taking in a wetsuit. And trying to integrate that into a decompression algorithm, which is complicated enough. Trying to add extra biometrics into that, that's way above my head. But yeah, it is definitely something that they're looking at, because I've spoken with a lot of the manufacturers, and yeah, it's definitely on the cards. They're looking into it. I think just implementing it and putting it into a recreational model of a dive computer can be a little bit tricky and cost prohibitive, because yeah, a lot of additional technology and communications. I don't know whether Garmin will go down that route, because they do have the heart rate monitor sort of put on the underside, one of those green little flickering lights that measures your pulse, your heart rate. I don't think it does skin temperature, but even that can be quite tricky. If it's on a dive computer, wrist mounted, and you're wearing that over your wetsuit, it's not going to measure your skin temperature. So it's always got like a little asterisk next to it. But that Scuba Pro one, yeah, very, very clever. Question 2 comes from Hugh Idiyit, which hopefully isn't your real name, but they say, or it could be, in which case I apologise. They say, "Hi Mark, any recommendations for a vented hood, 2 to 5 mil, and with or without a collar? I mainly dive in warm water, but even there I sometimes use a hood because most heat is lost through the head," correct? "And the one that I have, a simple neoprene one, drives me nuts because it's, as most hoods, collecting air underneath after mask clearing. I know about the Aqualung Hoods with the purge valve, or the fourth element ones with micro holes. Any solution about the problem above is highly appreciated as well. Cheers from Germany. Hello, or guten Tag. That's about the extent of my German, unfortunately. If you have a hood, you could make some little holes. I wouldn't make them too big because then that just promotes water ingress. Bare, B-A-R-E, they make some nice hoods, but mainly down to the internal lining. It is, I want to say, it uses infrared, omni-red, I think they call it. And that internal lining helps to reflect the heat that's escaping from your head. So even though you get a 5mm, it's actually warmer and it feels a bit more like a 7 or an 8mm. So that's definitely an option. Otherwise, most of my hoods are just the ones that come with my dry suit. And touch wood, they've all had them. I've got some waterproof hoods. My fourth element hoods is the one that I go for. I think I do have a bare hood here. Does this, yeah, oh, actually, this is the that internal lining that I was telling you about. It's quite inconspicuous in this red, but yeah, it feels suspiciously warmer than just any old like neoprene lining, because it bounces the heat back into it. But you do have that separate little section up at the top, so these vents, and then on the outside you have a vent as well. The holes won't line up perfectly. They'll be slightly offset so that the air can come out, travel, and then up out of the hood itself, but water, it kind of gets trapped in there, so it's not flushing in and out. I prefer bibless, which is why I don't use this one too much, because it's got a huge bib, but that's mainly because I dry suit dive. If I were to spend more time in my wetsuit, yeah, probably I'd stick with it, but my experience with bibbed hoods in a dry suit, even with that warm neck, that section of neoprene just in front of your neck, you tuck it in, and by the end of the dive it's folded up and you just got this shiny silver neck in all the photos. So I try and avoid them, or I try to avoid bibs, and I often end up just cutting them off. But yeah, bare definitely know what they're doing. The neoprene itself is quite nice and stretchy as well, and I tend to go upper size, just because it is so much nicer just to put a slightly oversized hood on. Not too big so water's flashing in and out, but big enough that you can just slip it on and it doesn't feel like it's squashing your head. So yeah, normally buy like 2 different sizes and then send one back. That's my usual recommendation, or at least try 2 on, and select the larger size. But yeah, you can do it yourself. I just use like a hot needle or something, just pierce it through the neoprene. That will help to vent the gas, and it's usually square on the top, maybe slightly behind of the top, just one little hole, and that will help it from expanding. Ren's Remain says, I am going to dive in the north. Sounds like Game of Thrones. And I'm looking for a heating system. I already have a dry suit, the Mars XR3, and I don't know which heating system I want to buy. Oh yeah, that's right. They asked basically similar questions twice. So I put them in the script twice. They also ask, I'm looking for a heating system and saw the Santi thermovalve does fit on the Mars XR3 dry suit, question mark. So yeah, that's my usual recommendation, the Santi thermovalve, because then you have an external battery and then an internal suit. With the Mars valves, they're a Sci-Tech size. There are basically 2 sizes of inflate and deflate valves. You get Apex or Sci-Tech. I forget which one is bigger or smaller, but one is slightly bigger than the other. I can't remember which way around it is. But I spoke with Mares and they said that it's actually the Sci-Tech size that they fit to their dry suit, because they are Mares valves. I think they used to be Moby, but I think now they're they might be proprietary, they might be their own Mares valves, but apparently they are Cytec size. So if you are buying a Santi Therma valve, double check that you're getting the right size, because you'll either have Apex or Cytec. So it'll often have like an A or an S on the end of the part number or something. So double check that. Mares XR does make their own heated undersuit. They make the active heating vest, but with that, everything's on the inside. So you have a vest, you have 2 batteries, unless they changed it, 2 batteries on the inside, and I don't think there's an external control. So it's just kind of, you switch it on at the beginning of the dive, you zip yourself into your dry suit and you go, and then it just runs until the battery runs out. I think you've got 4 different power settings, so you can have really hot, that only burns for a little amount of time, or just kind of gentle warm. Whereas with Santi, of course, you have the complete control on the battery. You just press the button to switch it on or off, and if you need to, you can disconnect it from the outside. But that's why you need that thermo valve. Sounds like you already understand the concept, but yeah, just get the Cytec size version, and then yeah, it's really much up to you. The bigger the undersuit, or the more like parts to it, the bigger the battery you're going to need. I think the smallest they do is a 6 amp hour battery, which is a nice cute little battery, but that will do like the vest for like an hour or 2. It'll do the gloves for a fair amount of time, but it doesn't have enough juice on the inside to do the full BZ400 suit. So double check that. I think the largest I've seen is a 24 amp hour battery. That will do the full suit and gloves to keep you nice and warm. So, but that is more expensive than the just the vest that you can get from Mares XR. MTN Rider, I presume Mountain Rider, says, would you be so kind, of course, as to go over the best practices for fitting / adjusting bungee mount compasses? Yeah, where is my compass? Here it is. So I do it a weird way. Most people do it parallel. I do it in a crisscross. There's no real rhyme or reason why I've done it this way round. This is set up for dry suit because it's a bit wobbly. So I typically put it on the palm, or the back of my palm, just to, I'm trying to do it to that camera, but you can't see it, just to sort of have it out of the way, and I can still use my hand, and there's not too much going up, like up my arm. Typically sits on my left hand side, but I've got my my Terrac on at the moment, so I suppose that works. And then yeah, so I have it crisscross, so one thumb going through the bungees, but when I'm going into warmer waters, this is why this section has a longer tab. I pull this a bit tighter and then tie an extra knot just so that it's snug on my wrist and it moves with me. But most divers that I see tend to have just 2 parallel bands. If you make it one continuous, then if you get one cut, then you lose both straps. So I have 2, well, basically 4 knots, 2 separate sections of bungee crisscrossed over one another, and then just sort of tied up. And it should be snug, but not like cutting off blood circulation. It should just be comfortable enough so that you can put it on and not really feel it, but it shouldn't move around. When it's on my dry suit, yeah, you really don't notice it because it's going over the gloves and everything. And the window should be facing you, so that you can actually use it for just inline navigation. But yeah, that's basically it. Just get a section of, I think it's like 4mm bungee. That's typically the, yeah, about 4mm bungee is the usual standard, and yeah, you can get these boots, or they typically come with them as well nowadays. But yeah, that's all it is. Two separate sections of 3mm bungee, and yeah, just sort of measure them twice, cut them once, just so that you know. don't cut off any excess before you're definitely sure it's comfortable. But yeah. And then if you dive in a dry suit, as I do, have one that's set up quite long, and then when you do go to warmer climates, just pull it a bit tighter and tie a second knot so that it's not just dangling off your hand. Leopold Bloom says, "Hi Mark, not really an Ask Mark question." Oh, then I'm not interested. No, but anyway, recently you mentioned one could ask for products to be offered by the Simply Scuba shop. Probably, okay. Unfortunately, I didn't find out how to suggest things on the shop website, so I would drop you a line in the comments. Cool. When I see trash whilst diving, I cannot help but pick up as much as possible. Well done, very good. I used to put it in a mesh bag, but there are specially designed thigh pockets called Kirschberg. Valves seem to be in short supply these days, which makes this so much easier. You put stuff in with one hand via a sleeve, and it stays in until you empty the bag via a zipper. The bags are made by hand under fair conditions in Indonesia using upcycled materials. Would Simply Scuba consider to add trash bag to your products on offer? Probably. I can't make any comments or promises because I'm not in the buying team anymore. But if you... The best way to do that is if you head over to our Instagram and just search for @simplyscuba, and then send us a message. That usually comes straight through to me, and then I can forward that to our buying team. If you include all of the details like sort of shipping and trade and web costs and all that kind of stuff, and any limitations that are required, then just include that all in your message, send it over, and I'll forward it on to the buying team. But all that kind of stuff is all very interesting. I just tend to store it in my thigh pockets wherever there's any sort of free space. But a mesh dedicated trash pocket, definitely a good idea and very interesting. I know Fourth Elements, they've released a trash mesh bag, which is just a mesh bag that you just stow in a pocket until you see something and collect it. I think more and more divers are getting into this, yourself included, which is fantastic. In that, just whenever you're on like a safety stop or something, you're just kind of cruising around. There's no sense just bobbing there if you're near a reef, obviously. Just have a look around, see if there's any trash sort of around there, and pick it up. And then between dives, I mean, I did it once where we're in the Philippines, and the second group was still doing their stops. I was kind of bored, so I just grabbed my mask and snorkel. They were plastic bags on the surface, and you just jump in, clean them, get them out of the water. The one that I don't regret, but it is one of those threads that you pull on and it just keeps going, and there was fishing line, monofilament, and it was kind of like dotted between these pinnacles of reef in the Red Sea. And I started off like collecting it and very carefully sort of picking it out of all of this like pronghorn, I don't know, coral. It was a long time ago. And then it would zip to another pinnacle, and you're like, okay, so even more. And it just kept going and going and going, this long line. And you're like, oh, Struth, is it ever going to come to an end? How much gas have I got left? I think I did get it all because I didn't want to cut it. And I just had this huge like mound. And I don't think I had thigh pockets at the time neither. So I was just carrying this thing and just sort of put it on the deck of the boat getting out. But if I had a Kirschberg, maybe that would make my life a little bit easier. But head over to Instagram. I'll pop a link down in the description below, so you can head over there after this, and pop us a message, and I'm sure we can have a chat. Dwayne T asks, how do you equalize with a full face mask? I've tried moving the jaw and swallowing. They don't seem to work as well as holding your nose and blowing. It depends on the mask. With masks like Ocean Reef, you have two little, can't think what you'd call them, knobs is probably the best term, and they sit just in front of your nose. They sit on a slider so you can move them up and down, and they're on little pegs so that you can rotate them, and that's sort of, because it's off center, you can adjust exactly how far apart they are. And when you go to equalize, you push the top of the mask to your forehead because it's a Z-shaped seal, it moves, and that's just enough to move those plugs up into your nose, and that's how you block your nose, so they're against that. If you don't have that, I know some commercial diving masks just have like a bar that you push from the outside and does something similar. With a full face snorkel mask, they quite rarely have those because they're more made for diving on the surface. If you try and dive under the water, there's quite a lot of volume or air volume inside of that, so they're quite buoyant. So trying to get under the water is easier said than done. There's no other, there's plenty of techniques. I think I broke as many of them down in a video. If I can find it, I'll link it up here. But yeah, where you go through Valsalva, I can't remember the name of them, but there's lots of different ways. I tend to do the sort of the yawning, where you kind of start that yawn, which drops the light sort of soft palate and stretches the eustachian tube, or the Eustachian tube, however you pronounce it. And with a bit of practice, you can kind of do that permanently, and just kind of pull it down. It's a bit like saying that K, really hard to describe. And that's how I do it. It takes some practice. It's not as easy as just pinch your nose and blow, as you say, but once you get it, that's probably the best way if you don't have something to do that to. Otherwise, it would just have to be like nose plugs or something. Put them in before you put the mask on if you really need to. You lose the option of breathing through your nose and mouth whilst you're wearing the full face snorkel mask, but it's an option. If you have a look at the like apnea nose plugs, they have plenty of ones just to pinch your nose. So that's probably the best way to do it. But for scuba diving, most full face masks will have some kind of thing just in front of your nose, which if you push the front of the mask towards you or push some kind of a lever, it moves it in front of your nose, so you can push against it, block your nostrils and blow against it. And that's it for this week. Interesting questions, again, as usual, and went in very different directions compared to sort of what's normal. But yeah, you guys are always amazing at coming up with very interesting questions. But if you have any questions, anything that you want to know about the equipment or diving or the industry, let me know down in the comments below. And if you use the hashtag AskMark, it just highlights it behind the scenes so that I can see it. Remember to head over to simplyscuba.com, where you can buy all sorts of interesting shiny scuba equipment. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.